Chapter 6, Looping, Part 2. One pitfall to be aware of is failing to alter the loop control variable within the loop body. To recap from Part 1, there are 3 parts to every loop: an initialization of the loop control condition, a testing of the loop control condition, and an updating of the loop control condition. Let's take a look at an example. So here we've got loop count equals 1, that's the initialization. Loop count less than 3, that's the test. While loop count is less than 3, we are going to keep looping. System.println hello. But notice there's no braces here. So the only thing that's going to happen as a result of this loop is it's going to print hello. And it's going to print hello, and it's going to print hello, and it's going to print hello, because loop count is never updated. You'll notice that this code is indented. Loop count equals loop count plus 1 is indented, but it has no effect. Java doesn't care whether it's indented or not. The only reason we indent is to make it easier for the programmer to read, for another programmer to read if they're trying to help debug your code. So what we would need to do to fix this is to add an open brace underneath the W and while, and a close brace after loop count equals loop count plus 1. Then we'd have the 3 parts to our loop: the initialization, which is loop count equals 1, the test, which is loop count less than 3, and the update, which is loop count equals loop count plus 1. It's very common for beginning programmers to leave off the braces, so make sure that you check for that and have a code block after your while condition. If you don't need the braces, if you only have one statement that you're executing as a result of your while, it is still syntactically correct to put braces, to have a code block after the while. So it's better to have them when you don't need them than to not have them when you do need them. Another pitfall is creating a loop with an empty body. Let's take a look at an example here. Loop count equals 1. While loop count less than 3, notice there's a semicolon at the end of that line. That means that this loop will keep looping, because loop count less than 3 will always be true, but it will do absolutely nothing. So this is an example of an infinite loop, and it has no output, it doesn't do anything at all, doesn't update, and a very common error. In fact, it's very tough to see this kind of error because your program compiles, it just doesn't run the way you expect, and it's difficult to figure out what's wrong. If you ever get stuck that way, if you've been looking at your code for a while and you can't figure out what's wrong, please feel free to send it to me. I'm happy to take a look, and sometimes another set of eyes helps to solve a problem when you can't see it yourself. I think it's the same thing like proofreading an English paper. I don't know about you, but sometimes a common typo that I will make will be very difficult for me to catch myself, but somebody else looking at my paper will say, oh, it's right there. You typed do when you meant to type so. So another thing we need to look at is altering a definite loops control variable, part 1. Definite loop. That is another term for count-controlled loop, and it is a loop that will loop a specific number of times. Typically, we alter the loop control variable of a definite loop or a count-controlled loop by adding 1 or by subtracting 1. We can either count up or we can count down. Let's see an example. Loop count equals 3. While loop count greater than 1, so we've got our initialization, loop count equals 3, we've got our test, loop count greater than 1, and we've got our update, loop count equals loop count minus 1 inside the loop. How many times will this loop? How many times will hello be printed? Let's see, loop count is initialized to 3, while 3 is greater than 1, it is, we enter the loop, we print hello. Loop count equals loop count minus 1, so loop count becomes 2. We loop back up and test, is 2 greater than 1? It is, so we enter the loop and we print hello. Loop count equals loop count minus 1, so it becomes 1. 2 minus 1 is 1. And we loop back up and we test, is 1 greater than 1? It is not, so your loop is done and hello was printed twice. Writing an indefinite while loop. An indefinite loop is one that we don't know, we the programmer don't know how many times it's going to loop. That's based on either what the user inputs or something that's read from a file. So we don't know when we're coding how many times it's going to be executed. An example might be prompting the user to input a password. We don't know how many tries they're going to need to get it right. Another example might be asking the user, do you want to keep going or do you want to quit? Let's look at an example. Here's a complete working program, and let's scroll down to that while loop. Look at response equals keyboard.nextInt. There we are initializing the loop control condition, and the user is going to enter 1 for yes or any other number for no. So if the user enters 1, response equals 1, we enter the loop. And we do the balance equals balance plus balance times int rate, system.print, year equals year plus 1, system.print, blah, blah, blah. Response equals keyboard.nextInt. So it's getting the next number the user has entered and then looping back up and saying while response equals 1. If it does, we enter the loop again. We don't know if the user is going to enter 1 or 2 or 10. 10 wouldn't, oh well, sorry. Never mind. We don't know what the user is going to enter, but as long as they keep entering 1, we will keep looping.